Hey friends, this is Audie Cornish, host of CNN This Morning and The Assignment, and guess what? Every story you care about, every angle you want unpacked is now streaming on CNN. That means you can catch my show or other CNN programming whenever you want on your favorite device. And a subscription also gets you access to exclusive video series and unlimited articles. So subscribe to CNN at cnn.com/subscription.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts. I'm your haunted host, Jennifer, your resident medium and a teller of ghost stories. I can't believe we're here. Happy Halloween. I thought to celebrate together, what is the trickiest treat that I can possibly offer you? So what I have done is collected over an hour's worth of ghost stories. I hope you enjoy this wicked good time, and I hope you have a spooky, fun, safe Halloween. The ghost stories begin right now. I live 2 houses down from my grandmother, who lived in that house for well over 30 years, and I am now 31. In the basement were 2 bedrooms. These bedrooms had an adjoining closet that you could slide open and walk into the other room. One of my aunts lived with my grandmother in one of these bedrooms. My aunt had a love for collecting dolls. Not just any dolls, but clown dolls. Well, my aunt has a 4-foot porcelain-faced clown doll that has a creepy smile on its face. When I was younger, I had to sleep in the opposite room, and the 2 doors on that closet had been removed, so I got a pretty good view of the creepy clown doll while sleeping down there. One night, when I was 15, I stayed the night, and the doll was on the left side of the other room. It had stormed pretty badly that night, and I swear I had seen that doll in different places with every flash of lightning. And when I woke up the next morning, it was on the right side of that room, just 2 feet from the closet, sitting in a position where it was staring at me with that creepy smile. To this day, the doll is still down there, and even my mom has admitted that she thinks that doll has moved from time to time. And as long as that doll is still there, I refuse to go down there alone, ever again. I've always hated the basement to my house. Something about the stale air, the way the sound seems to get swallowed up by the darkness. It never sat right with me. I avoided going down there as much as I could. But one night, I had no choice. My power had gone out on the main floor, and the breaker box was downstairs, in that basement. Armed with only my phone's flashlight, I crept down the wooden stairs, each step groaning as I made my way down there. The air was damp, thick with the scent of mildew. I hurried to the far wall, flipped on the breaker, and let out a relieved breath as the lights flickered back on, casting a glow down the basement steps. Heading back towards the warmth and the light, I was focused on my goal as I ascended the basement steps as quickly as I could. That's when I heard it. A scraping sound, soft at first, like fabric dragging against wood. It came from the bottom of the stairs. I turned slowly, my stomach tightening. There, in the dim, something shifted in the shadows. A figure was crawling towards me. Its limbs moved in a sickeningly slow, unnatural way, elbows and knees jutting at sharp angles. I couldn't see all of its face in the darkness, but I could feel its eyes, hollow and empty, locked onto mine. I staggered backwards up the remaining steps, my pulse hammering in my ears. It moved faster, its nails scraping against the wooden stairs as it pulled itself, crawled up towards me. As I struggled to get away from it, my frantic movements swayed the light from my phone this way and that, and when the light did land on the figure again, it was halfway up the stairs. I bolted up the last of the steps, slamming the basement door behind me and throwing the deadbolt into place. It didn't seem like a strong enough latch. I left for the evening, staying with a friend until the reasoning of daylight found me. I haven't opened that door since. I will never go down there alone again. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I think I hear it. Soft, rhythmic scratching from the other side of that door. I think my house has a poltergeist. Lights turn on and off. Items fly off the shelves and counters. One time, when I was home at night by myself, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I looked over, and I saw that the scarf I had draped over the top of my bathroom door, the bottom half of it, was suspended at a 20-degree angle, including the tassels, in mid-air. At this point, so many things were happening in my apartment, including physical welts down my back, that I was terrified to be home. I ended up getting dressed and going outside the building before I broke down crying, and I called my grandmother to come pick me up. A different time, my friend and I were outside talking when we heard what sounded like someone completely trashing my apartment. I'm talking chairs being smashed into walls, shelves being tipped over. I was actually the only person living in the building at the time, and we raced up the stairs to catch whoever it was. But not a single thing was moved in my apartment, and all the other units were locked. When we first moved in, everyone hated coming to our building. They said it felt off. My ex and I never felt that way at first and thought everyone was exaggerating. But by the time I moved, I wouldn't speak about ghosts or watch anything remotely paranormal in my apartment. Years later, I watched the movie Paranormal Activity at a friend's house, and I cannot describe the chill I felt. Similar things have been happening in my own home. Thankfully, I haven't experienced anything like it since I moved. Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts. I'm your spooky and spiritual host, Jennifer, and tonight I'm going to offer you a supernatural sampling of both those things. A dash of spooky, and let's balance it out with a little bit of wonder that the spiritual side of mediumship can bring. And as it so happens, the majority of my spectral stories this evening involve child ghosts. Now, the idea of a child ghost is a complex one. First, can you take the spirit at face value? A popular fear is that this entity that is engaging with you isn't what it seems at all. Instead, it's trying to fool you into thinking it is innocent and trustworthy, when in reality, it is anything but that. And that's one idea. The other approach to this is the sadder one, that the spirit wandering around is actually that of a child. So, are those your choices? It's either sinister trickery or heartbreak? No wonder so many people literally run screaming from this topic. But tonight I'm going to diligently and sometimes delicately dive into it. As always, let's start with the spooky, dear listener. When I was 10, one night, I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, followed by someone sitting on my bed. I felt my leg grazed and the bed sink under a person's weight. It's just Mom, I thought, and opened my eyes. It was not my mom. I found an eyeless boy. He had black, empty sockets. He was about my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand, and in it was a little box. I was startled, but instinctively reached out. He pulled back. I reached again and said, "Give it." And then I blinked, and he was gone. But I could still see the imprint of where he sat on my bed. Fast forward 5 years. My girlfriend came over to do homework. After she finished, she took a nap while she waited for her parents to pick her up. When they arrived, I tried waking her. She opened her eyes suddenly, looked up at the corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there, and then went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness, and I explained what she had done. She looked haunted. "I saw a little boy," she said. "He was there, up, crouched in the ceiling corner, staring at me." Here's another spooky story for you. Enjoy. We were planning a trip to stay at my grandmother's house that my father had spent a large amount of time in as a kid. Dad managed to drive 17 hours straight to make the visit happen. Understandably, he was tired after the drive. My siblings and I all started to tuck in for the night, and my father checked in on us before going to bed himself. As he was talking, he stopped himself and pointed to the large mirror in the room and told us to cover it or, quote, "You'll have nightmares." Now, nightmares from a mirror of all things sounded a little fun to me, but my brothers, who were also sleeping in the same room, asked me to cover it. So I did. The next day, I asked my dad about the mirror, and he said ghosts use it as an entryway. A week later, I brought it up with my grandmother, and she scoffed, saying, "Oh, this house isn't haunted." I agreed, but I told her that the reason I brought it up was because my dad told me to cover the mirror. My grandmother then changed her expression and said, "Oh, the mirror." Apparently, that mirror came from her grandmother. She had worked as a nurse and had taken in those who could not pay for care during their last days. So she had made her home into a hospice. In a hushed tone, she admitted to me, those who stayed in that room with the mirror saw things. A lovely old lady saw and heard a young woman come into her room and play the harp. She was thankful for the lovely songs, but no person was known, nor was there a harp owned or heard anywhere else. A young boy found an older boy who played games with him and had remarked that he really knew his games. Lastly, a terrible woman who argued and had issues with everyone daily had a visitation, and her own words were that the devil had spat fire at her. She had even called the police and tried to accuse my grandmother of trying to kill her with the devil. My mother also claims to have seen the same young lady who played the harp, and my grandfather admitted once had seen, quote, that devil guy. My grandfather described him as a red man with horns that was too tall for the room and had to bend his neck down as it was taller than the ceiling height. The devil figure had stared down at him with piercing eyes and simply asked, "Why are you here?" During the rest of the visit, I kept that mirror covered. Years back, when I was in high school, some friends and I decided to play a little Halloween prank on a few friends. The plan was to have one of my friend's uncles wait out at the old cemetery until we showed up with our friends. We would walk around for a few minutes, and then he was supposed to jump out and scare us. Well, here's what happened. We showed up at the cemetery around 11 p.m. and the friends that we had who weren't in on the plan reluctantly went in with us into the cemetery. After walking a few steps, we all saw this glowing ball of light, which looked like it was about 30 yards away. The light itself kind of looked like a flashlight in one of those orange plastic jack-o'-lanterns that kids trick-or-treat with. Well, when we saw the light, naturally, our friends who didn't know what was going on freaked out and wanted to leave right away. But some of us knew better, and we were going to play it for all it was worth. I suggested that we go after it and find out what it was. My friends weren't too thrilled with that idea, but they sure weren't going to sit out in the middle of the cemetery by themselves, so they followed. We never could catch the light. It kept the same amount of distance between us at all times. If we walked slow, it would go slow. If we ran after it, it would move just as fast. The light even went through several sections of fence without rising or dropping its height. The whole time I was thinking to myself, how is my friend's uncle doing all of this? After about 10 minutes of chasing, the light finally just disappeared, which freaked us out even more. By this time, my friends were almost in tears. They were so scared, so we all left the cemetery. When we got back to town and dropped off my friends, we went straight to my friend's uncle's house to find out how the hell he did all of that. Well, he was passed out, and his wife told us he had been sleeping for 3 hours. The next day I saw him, and he apologized for not showing up when he was supposed to. When I told him about what happened, he sort of turned white and apologized some more. To my knowledge, no one has ever seen these lights before or after that night. This story has been submitted by Sunny. If you have a ghost story you would like to share, please email me at speaknow@italktoghosts.com. Thank you, Sunny, for your story. My first apartment was in Alameda, California. I lived in this great, big Queen Anne Victorian home, and my apartment was on the 3rd floor. I was a single mom, and my girlfriend and I didn't like to be in the place alone. There were quite a few things that happened in the apartment that led us to believe we had a ghost. Like, I would come into the kitchen and the cabinet doors would be open, or our living room had a closet and it would sound like someone was in there kicking the door. One evening, I went to check on my son, and there was a silhouette of a woman dressed like she was from the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, and she had curly hair like ringlets, and she was wearing an old period dress. This woman was hovering over my son, peering down at him in his crib. Because of all this activity, we thought that one night we would experiment with a Ouija board. I invited my friend Michelle to join us. Through the board, we made contact with a spirit by the name of Al. Al was very pleasant. He told us that the woman I saw was his wife and that they liked having a baby at the home. My friends and I talked to the spirit off and on a couple of different times, and then one evening Al says that his son was coming and that his son was evil. I don't remember his exact words, but basically that is what he said, and that we should get rid of the Ouija board because we shouldn't make contact with him. We agreed at the time, but in the end, we didn't listen, and we continued to use the Ouija board. Activity in the house really amped up. I had a party, and I was sitting next to a window, and there were one of those screens that the open window holds down. That screen, being held in by a very heavy window, flew out of the window and did a cartwheel before falling. It was very intense. We weren't on the Ouija board that night. It was just a bunch of friends hanging out and talking. Next time we did use the board, we asked the spirit who is in the house, and I don't remember what the spirit's name was, but he was very angry. Feeling the planchette on the board felt very strong. Our hands felt very heavy. And the board went on to tell my girlfriend what kind of car she was going to have, how many kids she was going to have, what she was going to go through. And the board went on to tell my girlfriend very mean, negative things about her future. I was feeling very protective of my friend, and I told this entity not to be mean to her. And then it turns its sights on me and told me that my brother was going to pass away. I ended up taking the Ouija board over to my brother's house. We told him what happened and asked him to get rid of it for us. Instead of myself being smart and putting it in the garage and getting rid of it, I didn't. I assumed that he would, and he didn't. Honest truth, my brother passed away a few months later. As I was helping my family clean his room, I found that Ouija board on the shelf in his bedroom. This story was submitted by Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you for sharing your story. When I was 17, I went out with a bunch of friends to see a movie at the local mall. I didn't have my driver's license yet, but a friend of mine did, and they had access to the family van, so the 6 of us all carpooled together. Included in the group was a boy in my physics class named John. Gosh, I had a crush on him all year, and finally someone in my friend group had invited him to join us that evening. Looking back, both of us agree this was our first date. It may not have been official, but we say it was because how many people can say they saw a ghost on their first date together? Turns out both John and I were super interested in the paranormal from a young age, so this first date agreement fits us perfectly. Back to the ghost story. After the movie was over, we all hit the drive-thru and drove around listening to music, talking, and really not wanting the evening to end. It was a lovely summer night and no one wanted to go home. I certainly didn't. We had just seen the movie Poltergeist 2, and John and I could have talked about all the scares, including that gross worm thing, all night. As we aimlessly cruised the neighborhoods, we found ourselves cutting through the local arboretum. There weren't many gates to close it off at night, but the trails were definitely supposed to be off limits after dusk. Suddenly, my friend parked the van. Apparently, we were going to go on a night hike adventure. Sorry, Mom, I could have been doing a lot worse. The 6 of us wandered up the trail, goofing off and joking that the creepy old man from the Poltergeist movie could be hiding behind any tree or shadow. I gotta admit, I was a little creeped out. A fact I didn't hide because it was a great excuse to hold on tight to John's arm. Plus, I had left my glasses at home. Call it typical teen angst, but I didn't want to wear them while out. I can see well enough, but on a real dark trail, I lose my distance vision really quick. All of a sudden, my friend in the front stops short and we almost bump into him. He freaks and panics and hisses for us to scatter as he jumps off the trail into the bushes. We all followed him, piling onto each other, and he whispered that he saw someone below coming up the trail towards us. We were all afraid it was the police and we were done for. As quietly as possible, we sat there, waiting and straining to hear something. Footsteps, talking, the sudden yell of someone commanding for us to come out with our hands up. Nothing. Literal crickets. My friend motions that he's gonna venture out and peek, and he does so. I watch him go out to the trail at a crouch, look down the hill, and then stand and just stare for a moment. A couple of blinks later, he shakes his head, turns to us with a completely frightened expression, and yells at us to run. He doesn't wait for us, though. He's suddenly booking it back to the van. Everyone starts running, and I can't see. Luckily, I have John's hand in a vice grip, and he pulls me up the trail. I glance behind me, and I see a glowing blob on the trail below. Honestly, it looked like a really blurry person in a glowing white dress making snow angel motions in the air. That unfocused, jumbled vision quickly disappeared behind me as I decided I'd better concentrate on the ground ahead of me, or I was going to break my neck. Inside the van, everyone was loudly talking over each other about what they saw. They insisted they saw a ghost. John turned to me excited and asked me what I saw. Dumbfounded and not quite sure what I glimpsed, I slowly raised my arms up and down from my sides. Everyone shouted their amazed agreement. My friend started the van and we headed home. We talked about it for days later. Except for Becky, she insisted she didn't see anything and refused to even hear someone bring it up. I don't talk to Becky anymore. John researched the area we were in and discovered that in the 1970s, a young woman had been murdered and her body was left in that arboretum. I truly believe we saw her ghost that night, signaling for us to help. I feel bad that we ran, and I hope that she has found peace. My fascination with the paranormal continues to this day. Same with John. We've been married 10 years, and I love it when he reads me ghost stories at night. When I was a little kid, my parents let me stay with my grandparents for a week over the summer. My grandparents lived in a large 3-story house, and there was only one bedroom on the first floor. I loved staying with my grandparents, but sometimes the house was a little too silent, and no matter how soft or low, I felt like I noticed every small noise that broke this silence. I would hear unfamiliar footsteps from the room on the first floor. Sometimes they came from my mom's former bedroom, which I had for myself while I stayed there. I asked my grandmother once if she could hear the footsteps. She shook her head and asked me if my mother had told me about this noise, which was odd because she hadn't. My grandmother explained that my mother always used to complain that someone else was in the house, but she herself had never heard or seen anything. 2 days later, I was sleeping in my mom's old bedroom, and I had this nightmare that while I slept on the bed, a tall, dark figure stood over me, just watching me. It had no eyes, but its head was bent towards my direction. It kept looking at me for a long while, but then all of a sudden it reached out and grabbed my wrist. I was so terrified I woke up sweating, even though there was plenty of air conditioning in the room. I reached for the light immediately, but as I switched on the lamp, my wrist hurt as if it had been heavily sprained. Gasping from the pain, I looked at my arm. There was a big red mark all around my wrist. I didn't even bother switching the light off. I just ran to my grandmother's room and crawled up onto her bed. The next morning, my arm was fine. I didn't say anything to my grandparents, but I ensured they were around me all the time, and I slept in their room the rest of the week. Nothing happened again. But when I got back home, I told my mom about it, and she told me the thing only bothers those who pay attention to it. According to her, I wasn't used to so much silence, and that's how it got me. The key to avoid the haunting was to keep your mind busy. The more you had on your mind, the easier you could tune it out, which explained why my grandparents never heard it. They were busy-minded people. I always kept myself busy after that whenever I visited the house. They still live there, and I didn't experience it again. A friend of mine who works as a flight attendant told me the creepiest story, one that she swears is 100% true, and knowing her, I believe her. She was working a long-distance flight back to the US, and there was cargo being transported in the lower section of the plane, which isn't unusual. Partway through the flight, she had to head down to the cargo area for something. She didn't say exactly why, but she had to descend the little stairwell that leads down. As she started walking down, she noticed a man sitting calmly on one of the steps. She was startled, of course. No passengers are ever allowed down there, and told him he wasn't supposed to be in that area. The man was polite and apologetic. He explained that he was just keeping his wife company since she was terrified of flying. He even gave her the wife's full name. After she finished what she was doing, she felt a little concerned. If this woman was that nervous, maybe she could offer her some reassurance or check to see if she needed anything. So she walked the long length of the cabin looking for the man and the woman he had mentioned. She ended up needing to check the manifest to find this woman by name, and she found the woman, clearly distressed. But here's where it gets strange. The man wasn't with her. In fact, someone else was sitting in the seat next to her. So my friend crouched down and gently said something like, "I heard you weren't feeling great. Can I get you anything to help you feel more at ease?" Then the woman kind of teared up and said she was doing her best, but it was difficult. She was a nervous flyer to begin with, and on top of that, she was accompanying her husband's body back home. He had passed away overseas, and his remains were being transported in the cargo hold. That's when it hit her. The man she saw sitting on the stairs, it was him. She said he looked completely real, not ghostly, not flickering or translucent or anything like that, just solid and kind. For a moment, my friend honestly thought the crew might have been pulling a prank on her. So as they landed, she made a point to watch every single person disembark. She wanted to be absolutely sure. Maybe she missed him. Maybe he was just a regular passenger after all. But she never saw him leave the plane. And when the cargo was unloaded, there it was, a casket. She says this experience haunted her ever since, not in a frightening way, but in a way that makes her believe, without question, that some people really do find a way to stay close to the ones they love. My wife and I were living in a house in the country in the state of Alabama. We never considered the house to be haunted. One night, however, something came to call. It really was the proverbial dark and stormy night. We had learned that in the colder months, you could cut down heat loss through the windows by wrapping plastic sheeting around the screens. As we learned that night, putting the plastic on the screens outside made it vulnerable to winds. The wind was blowing very hard in gusts from all directions. It was causing the plastic to flap against the screens. The trees were swaying back and forth outside, causing shadows to move about the room. I was sleeping very fitfully. The sounds and the light variations had me edgy and kept entering my dreams as nightmares. I dreamt of someone standing over the bed and woke to see the light show and hear the noise, and it was hard to separate the dream from reality. I had several nightmares in succession, but eventually drifted off to an uneasy sleep. At one point in the night, I woke to the distinct feeling that something was hovering over my head. I opened my eyes and looked up into what can only be described as a green mist. It was a bit like being inside a tent with the walls glowing from the light outside. There was something descending from the mist, extended towards my head like tentacles. As I looked up into the thing, I said, rather calmly under the circumstances, "What the hell is that?" My wife rolled over, took one look, and screamed. She got out of bed, crashed out of the room, leaving me alone with this green thing. At this point, the image seemed to be fading, and then it was gone. In a few minutes, my wife came back, rather sheepishly, and soon she was rolling over and going back to sleep as though nothing had happened. I, on the other hand, wanted some answers. "Did you see it too?" I asked. "Yes," she mumbled. "What was it?" I asked her. "I don't know," she replied, "but it was green." That was enough to tell me that she really had seen the same thing. The next day, when she was more chatty, I got her to describe the shape, and it was identical to what I saw. She said it was a domed-shaped object and had tentacles that seemed to reach down to my head. Is it possible that in my fitful sleep, I managed to generate something? At the time, and for years afterwards, I thought of the green thing as some evil thing trying to attack me. But I suppose it's possible I created it from my nightmares. We were just kids, walking along the ridge like we had done a dozen times before. It was past midnight, the kind of summer night where the air was thick and still, but the crickets never stopped. Our parents thought we were sleeping over at a friend's house, but we had snuck out, eager for the thrill of the dark. There were 4 of us. We weren't looking for trouble, just trying to spook each other with dumb stories and laugh it off. The ridge overlooked the old field below, a wide stretch of grass that seemed endless in the dark. During the day, it was harmless, but at night, it was different. The shadows were longer, and the silence was louder. We were halfway along the ridge when one of us stopped suddenly. Someone whispered, "Hey, what's that?" pointing down into the field. We all looked. There was a light down there, moving slowly. It was faint, flickering, like an old lantern. At first, we thought it was just a farmer or some guy from town. But who would be out there at this hour? One of us, always the loud one, cupped their hands around their mouth and shouted down, "Hey, you lost down there?" We laughed, but it was forced. Something about that light made my stomach turn to knots. And the light stopped moving when the shout echoed. It just stopped. Then it changed direction, coming towards us. The laughter died. We all went quiet. The light picked up speed, swaying faster as it cut across the field. It wasn't walking anymore. It was gliding, too smooth, too quick. And there was this sound, a faint whispering, like wind through dead grass. But there was no wind. Someone grabbed my arm. "Let's go," they hissed. Their voice trembled. None of us argued. We turned and bolted along the ridge. I didn't look back, but I could feel it, that light, closing the distance. My chest burned as I ran, heart hammering in my ears. When we finally reached the edge of the woods, we hid behind the last of the trees and then peeked back through the branches. The light was gone. From what we could see, the field was empty, silent. We never spoke about it after that night and stopped sneaking out for our midnight walks. But sometimes, when I pass that ridge alone, I swear I still see that flickering glow moving through the field. This happened to me about 6 years ago, but I'll never forget a single detail. I was staying with my aunt during my studies in London. My aunt was a kind lady in her 50s and living in a 2-bedroom house. She showed me to my room, and I remember thinking how cozy it was, with its small bed, a desk perfect for studying, a chair for reading, and a charming cupboard for all my clothes. The first night I was sleeping in bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard an old woman softly crying. Her small, sickly voice was saying, How could I sleep on her while she was in so much pain? I was terrified and couldn't explain what it was I was hearing. I spent the rest of the night sleeping in my room's chair. The next morning, my aunt asked me how I slept in the new space. I didn't tell her what had happened. I was trying to convince myself it had all been a strange nightmare. I was very uncomfortable with the idea of sleeping in that bed, but I had no choice. Nights went by, and if I was woken up by this strange, sad voice, I moved to the chair until morning. After a few months, a friend of my aunt came to visit us. He was telling me how he had took my aunt to a charity shop run by a hospice, and this is where they found the nearly new bed for my current bedroom. I was shocked to hear the origins of this bed. Still, not knowing this man and not wanting to look irrational, I kept my suspicions to myself. And that night, I gave the bed a deep cleaning. The base of the bed had 3 drawers underneath it. I opened one drawer, and I found numerous cards and gift papers inside. I took them out, and I was shocked to find out they were condolence cards for an old lady who had died after a long illness. Some of the cards had messages for her children, and there were notes about her maladies written by hospice nurses. Emotionally saturated by my find, I told my aunt everything and handed her the bundle of cards. I confessed the details of my sleeplessness due to this old woman's crying, how she always woke me up and would moan about her pain. The next day, my aunt threw out the bed and bought me a brand new one. We got rid of everything belonging to that bed, and I, with all my heart, wish the spirit of this lady to find peace. Wherever she is, I hope she's finally pain-free. This story was related to me by my friend Sarah. Sarah lives in a rural part of New England and is therefore used to dealing with the various effects of winter storms, including power outages and the temporary loss of phone service. One winter, after a particularly severe storm, the phone in her house was out for several days. Then, the phone started ringing again, at all hours of the day and night, at least 5 or 6 times a day. However, when someone picked it up, all they could hear was static and what sounded like the howling wind, and what everyone in the family described as a distinct, scratching noise. More annoyingly still, they couldn't make outgoing calls at all. They couldn't even get a dial tone. After a few days of lost sleep and frustration, Sarah left the cozy glow of the television to go to the neighbors and call the phone company. She explained her problem and told them her address, to which the surprised operator replied that she couldn't possibly be getting any phone calls at all, even faulty connections. The phone lines connecting to her house had been completely severed by a fallen branch, and workers had not yet had time to repair them. In fact, only yesterday they had cleaned up the broken lines out in the cemetery. Sarah's parents had the phone company send someone out to check on the lines, just to make sure. The service provider claimed that there was nothing wrong with the wiring or the phone itself, and there was no malfunction that could be causing the phone to ring since the outside lines were severed. Sarah's family was left with the unsettling conclusion that the down phone lines in the cemetery were causing the phone calls. Taking care of others has always been a passion of mine, and I love my job at our small local hospital. I work in one of the more difficult departments, the cancer ward. This makes my job emotionally trying in a lot of ways. I have seen my share of death since I started working here, and I also work the night shift. Working at night, it can be a little creepy when you have to go down to the morgue. One late evening, myself and a coworker were charged with taking a body down to the morgue. I mentioned I live in a small town. Our morgue is just a little freezer room in the basement of the hospital. The only thing down there in the heavy darkness, really, is the ramp up to the cold room where the body is to be placed. So she and I wheel the body down there and up the ramp. And then in hushed whispers, we argued who was actually going to go into the small freezer room with the body. Of course, I lost this brief argument. So I quickly swing the freezer door open, push in the body, and hurriedly close the door shut. We started filling out our paperwork when we heard an echoed moan. We looked around and then at each other. My coworker asked me, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. The moaning continued, changing direction and locations around us. Grabbing our paperwork, we left the gurney and ran up to the safety of the well-lit upper floors. Halfway down the hallway, she asked again if I had really heard what she did. Of course I did. Eventually, I confided all of this to a nurse in my department. She told me that she had had similar things happen to her in the morgue as well. To this day, I will not go down there alone. It was Halloween night, and I was 8 years old, preparing to go trick-or-treating with a group of neighborhood kids. I was going with my friend Jenny, her friends Haley and Allie, and Jenny's older brother who would be supervising us. Just as we were about to leave, Jenny's mom announced that she had a few rules for us that must be followed. We must be home by 9 p.m., do not talk to strangers, and wherever we go, Do not go down Captain Ellis Lane. Why can't we go down Captain Ellis Lane? I asked her mother, to which the reply was, that's the rule, now have fun. No further explanation. I knew where that road was because I had driven past it in the car with my mother multiple times, but never gone down it. All I knew was that it was desolate and dark and had an old abandoned farm a little ways down that road. After a passing thought of, oh, that street is a bit dark and poorly lit, that must be it, I put it out of my mind and left with my friends, ready to enjoy the evening. We trick-or-treated down several other streets and had gathered a lot of candy. People loved my costume and I had a great night. I was ready to head home and mentioned to my friend's brother that we should start heading back. My friends, of course, had other plans. On the way home, we stopped right in front of Captain Ellis Lane. I was perfectly content not going down the road, but all my friends said, what are you waiting for? Are we going or not? No, I said. Didn't you hear what Jenny's mom said? We're not supposed to go down this road. It was too late. They had already descended into the darkness, leaving me behind, and I ran ahead to catch up. I looked down the street, and from the view from the main road, it was completely unlit and looked abandoned, in complete contrast to the other streets in the area, which were well lit and densely populated. I heard a rattling of a flag against a flagpole, but could not tell where the sound was coming from, and the bristling of the wind through the trees. All I could see was this one house immediately to my right, an old house that looked like a farmhouse at what appeared to be the end of the street, and a large fenced-off plot of land to the right far ahead. The left side of the street was dense with trees. It felt like I was walking down a road in the middle of nowhere, and something was lurking in the shadows, waiting to jump out. I didn't like it one bit. I could barely make out that in the distance, there was a small white shed. All of a sudden, Jenny shouted, 1, 2, 3, I'll race you to the shed. Let's go. And I immediately protested. I insisted that we were trespassing, that the farm likely belonged to one of the houses we had just passed. I didn't want to get in trouble, and I'm not going to lie, I was scared. But I also knew I would be left behind in the dark to fend for myself if I didn't take off running towards that shed. Just as we prepared to venture down that spooky road, with my heart racing and pounding out of my chest, I heard the creaking of a door and a hard thud as it shut. We all froze and stared at one another, trying to figure out where the sound had come from. Allie said it must have been from the shed. The door was probably not firmly secured and had blown shut in the wind, she said, an explanation I was prepared to accept, but did not truly believe it. That shed was so far in the distance I could barely see it, just a vague outline. I was ready to turn and run back, but they began walking ahead of me on the gravel road. Now slowly walking and trying to listen for sounds of activity. As we walked, I felt the distinct sensation that someone was following us. There were 5 of us, but whomever was walking furthest back said they could hear footsteps immediately behind them. But when we stopped, they stopped with us, and when we turned around, there was no one there. As we approached the shed, I heard the rustling of leaves and footsteps in the woods. These were not the sounds of an animal. They sounded like human footsteps. I was not even thinking of the paranormal right now. I feared we were being followed by a living person, and I was terrified. Haley shouted out that she swore she saw a shadow dart in front of the shed and then disappear. I didn't see anything, but also I was too nervous to think. We quietly approached it. I was on high alert for any movement. Haley, the bravest of us, walked up to one of the shed windows and began to peer inside. It was too dark to see anything. She took out her flashlight and began to look inside. For a few seconds, she looked around and all seemed normal. All of a sudden, she let out a loud, terrified scream, dropped her entire bucket of candy, and ran away from us through the field and back to the road. She was stuttering as she tried to tell us what she saw, and none of us understood what she was trying to say since she was so far away now. She was shaking profusely and practically in tears, and begged us to run back to her and go back home. I could tell she was genuinely scared. Lights began to turn on in the few of the nearby houses and voices could be heard. Haley's scream must have caught their attention. We quickly picked up our belongings, dashed back to the street as quietly as possible, and headed back to the main road. No one saw us as we fled as fast as we could down the dark street. When we got back to the house, Haley confessed what she saw. She said that she was looking in the shed, and at first she only saw gardening tools and empty crates, but then she saw a child. Not a normal child, but a small boy with gaping, bloody holes where the eyes were supposed to be, a bony, skeleton-like, emaciated frame, and the most disgusting, rotting teeth she had ever seen, smiling in a sinister smile, walking towards the window. We all froze, terrified by the thought, but we all promised that no matter what we did, we would keep it secret from Jenny's mom that we disobeyed her rule. To this day, I don't know if she really saw the image of the child in the window or if she was playing a prank on us. But recently, I drove down the road during daylight and noticed that the shed was no longer there. I learned that Jenny's mother had almost purchased a home on that street, but had decided against it because she preferred the street they ended up living on. And she too had found the abandoned farm area to be creepy and off-putting, and didn't want us there because it was poorly lit. If only she knew what Haley actually saw that night. And with that, dear listener, we've reached the end of this Halloween episode of I Talk to Ghosts. Do you have a favorite ghost story that I shared tonight? Is there one that you remember time and time again at night in the dark? Again, have an amazing Halloween, and no matter where you wander off to in this world or the next, just remember, come back and visit with me. Have a lovely, happy Halloween, and good night.
Hey there, I'm Susie, and I'm the host of Beyond the Ferns podcast. Each week, I take you beyond the headlines into the stories that linger long after the news fades. From chilling true crime and unsolved cold cases, to paranormal encounters, cults, and extraordinary survival stories. It's a little bit of everything for everyone. Whether you're drawn to mysteries, fascinated by the strange and unexplained, or simply love a good story, I focus on the truth, the details, and above all, justice for the victims and survivors. So buckle up, things are about to get a little scary. Follow Beyond the Ferns wherever you get your podcast. Thanks, y'all.
Welcome to Brew Crime, a true crime and beer podcast. Join me, Mike.
And me, JT.
as we explore the world of crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is a podcast where we pick a theme, cover a few cases, and pair them with a brew.
Between themes, we do what we call Brew Crime News, a funny look at current news stories, be it crime, animals, sports, or even celebrities.
You can find us on all social media at Brewcrime. Our website is brewcrime.com, and you can find us on any podcast app at Brewcrime Podcast.
Join us as we discuss the horrible crimes that surround us, and maybe, definitely, tip a bottle or two back as you do it. Drink with us weekly.